Welcome, Wapham crew, new listeners, guys, gals, ghouls, whoever may be listening out there beyond the omniverse today. Secure your tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a rocky mountain high, get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners, and settle down snugly at mile marker 420 in colorful Colorado. It is Sunday, April 9th, Monday, April 10th for those of you across the pond and beyond. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, and welcome to VR Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. I hope you guys had a happy Easter with your family. Man, it's unusually warm today. I think we might actually be getting into spring. It's 73 degrees Fahrenheit here in the Mile High Clubhouse, and it's actually 23 degrees Celsius for those of you that go by that. Yeah, I hope you guys had an awesome weekend. The kids had a lot of fun. The Easter Bunny came and left a lot of sugar for everyone, and there was also regular eggs and some deviled eggs to be had by all. If you could, you guys in the chat, just let me know if you can hear this one. Okay, I just turned off my camera really quick to see if the sound was coming through because somebody actually just came in and left, so I'm just making sure that's working out alright. So I'm your host, TessaTNT, and as I said before, I'm broadcasting live from the Mile High Clubhouse today. If you're listening to us live right now, you may be listening to us on YouTube, Twitch, as well as Facebook. You can also find us live on KPNL Radio, which you can find at KPNL Radio at kpnl.db.com. You may also find us on eTalk Radio, which you can find on etalk.tv/radio. They have a lot of good hosts over there if you guys want to check it out. I implore you to do so. So if you want to listen to us in your free time, whether you're working it or working out, be sure you tune in to us under We Are Paradox Media at Spreaker, Twitter, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Castbox, Tumblr, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Podcast Chaser, and Podvine. Still working on the Amazon thing, but we'll see what happens with that. If you don't mind, mosey on over to our YouTube and please subscribe, give us a like for any video that you've watched or listened to, and yeah, let us know any sort of feedback so far as good, bad, guests you'd like to have on in the future, etc. Just seeing how the music's going, you can kind of hear it, eh? So I was just checking that really quick. So tonight, I have a treat for all my guys and gals out there. Tonight, it is story time with me, your host, TessaTNT, and we'll be getting into this book, which is Death, a History of Man's Obsessions and Fears. This is by Mr. Robert Wilkins, and it's been pretty interesting. It's also been kind of gross, but, you know, it's death, so. We have about this much left of our book. It kind of looks weird, huh? So I did bring another book, just in case we do finish, and these books I actually got from my grandpa Frank when he passed away. My grandma Jean was so beautiful and gracious enough to gift these to me. There was one about the Philadelphia Project that I really wish that I had, because that shit's crazy. Don't know if you heard about it, but really crazy. A lot of people, if you don't know, like ended up in bulkheads, aka walls, and a part of different stuff within that ship. Alright, so I'm not quite sure where we left off. I think we're over here. Shoot, I should have looked at my bookmark to see how it was facing, but we'll just start over here on page 174. So after the first 2 hours of reading this book, perhaps getting over to the other book, we'll be moving on to Reddit Ghost Stories. so make sure you hang out for that. And of course, happy Easter, everybody. I hope you guys had a wonderful Easter. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we were gonna do Easter dinner here, but didn't have to because we went out to the ranch in Arborlees, and oh my gosh, it's so much warmer out there than it is here. Like, I don't know, I'm gonna be in Phoenix for a little bit before I go on my cruise, but I'm hoping it's this nice down in Mexico when I go there. Hopefully we'll see what happens. Page 174 from the chapter Cremation. Let me actually go over here to my Facebook, aka Facebook, and just see if anybody's in the chat over there. Real quick like. Nope, don't see nobody. Okay, and the sound's sounding good. Ooh, you can hear that music. So for this one, I believe it's The Creeper. Let me look at my playlist, just so you guys are aware. Oh, it's this house, or the house. From what I'm seeing, it's probably a pretty creepy house. Let's move on. Christians followed the Jews in their abhorrence of cremation, regarding it as a pagan custom. The central tenet of Christianity was the resurrection of the body, and this belief could not be reconciled with cremation. Though it must be emphasized that for Christians, burial was a symbolic affirmation of resurrection and did not accord with the Egyptian belief that life in the other world depended on the physical preservation of the corpse. I'm thinking though, like, as far as that goes, like, God being who he is, if he wants to come back from the dead and you're cremated, he can do it. Like, look at the universe, look at everything else. Holy shnikes. Ignorant of the symbolism, enemies of Christianity contrived to prevent the burial of Christian corpses and to burn them, so as to prevent resurrection. Christians themselves were not above using cremation as the bar of everlasting life. Many years after his death in 1384, John Wycliffe, I almost said Wycliffe, like Wycliffe John. That is so weird. John Wycliffe. Wycliffe John. Then regarded as a heretic, was exhumed and cremated, and his ashes were thrown into the river Swift. The rise of Christianity in Europe saw the further decline of cremation. A big disincentive was delivered by Charlemagne in 789 when he decreed punishment by death for anyone found practicing cremation. The renaissance of interest in cremation is usually given as being in the second half of the 19th century, although a famous case occurred in Italy in 1822. In that year, Percy Shelley, the poet, drowned in the Mediterranean near Leghorn. When his body was washed ashore, Tuscan quarantine laws, drafted to protect against imported plague, laid down that the body was to be burned on the beach. Shelley's corpse was temporarily buried beneath the sand until the cremation could be carried out. An account has been left to us in Edward Trelawney's Recollections of the Last Days of Shelley and Byron. I felt we were no better than a herd of wolves or a pack of wild dogs, in tearing out his battered and naked body from the pure yellow sand that lay so lightly over it, to drag him back to the light of day. Even Byron was silent and thoughtful. We were startled and drawn together by a dull, hollow sound that followed the blow of mattock. The iron had struck a skull, and the body was soon uncovered. Lime had been strewn on it. This, or composition, had the effect of staining it a dark and ghastly indigo color. Byron asked me to preserve the skull for him, but, remembering that he had formerly used one as a drinking cup, I was determined Shelley's should not be so profaned. After the fire was well kindled, oil and salt made the yellow flames glisten and quiver. The corpse fell open, and the heart was laid bare. The frontal bone of the skull, where it had been struck with a mattock, fell off, and as the back of the dead rested on the red-hot bottom bars of the furnace, the brains literally seethed, bubbled, and boiled as in a cauldron for a very long time. It is said that Byron's delicate constitution was so upset by the stench that he left early, begging friends, "Let my carcass rot when it falls." Shelley's ashes were buried in the Crossley Cemetery in Rome, but the poet's heart, which had failed to burn, was plucked from the flames by Trelawney and subsequently returned to Britain for burial. The most important impetus given to the renewed interest in cremation was the overcrowded burial grounds and the insanitary conditions prevailing in the 19th century. Better utilization of land to meet the needs of the living was a potent argument in favor of cremation. The major practical obstacle to cremation was the immense difficulty of achieving total incineration of a body in a reasonable time by the methods deemed aesthetically acceptable. In the 1860s and 70s, much energy was devoted to the design of furnaces by Professors Pauli, Guerini, and Brunetti in Italy and Siemens in Germany. In Britain, an early advocate of cremation was Sir Henry Thompson, surgeon to Queen Victoria. He and like-minded people formed themselves into Cremation Society of England in 1874. The loose talk of using cremated ashes as fertilizer or harnessing creation gases for street lighting did little to further their cause. Amid great opposition from clergy nationally and from Surrey residents locally, Thompson and associates built the first crematorium at Woking in 1878. Excuse me. Just a few miles from Brookwood Cemetery. The furnace, designed by Professor Guerini, remained unlit for many years because the Home Secretary's permission was not necessary before cremations could take place, and such permission was not forthcoming. Despite hostility in high places, public opinion about cremation was shifting, albeit slowly. In 1882, a Captain Henham requested permission to cremate his wife and mother. It was refused. Undeterred, he built a small crematorium on his estate and proceeded with cremations. No action was taken against him. When he died in 1883, he was also cremated in his private crematorium. The turning point came in 1883 when a mad Welsh clergyman, Dr. William Price of Lantressant, who had fathered a child at the age of 83, cremated this 5-month-old baby whom he had christened Jesus Christ Price. He immersed the body in a barrel of paraffin and set the pyre alight. The police, called by local villagers returning from chapel, quickly extinguished the flames, and the body was taken away for autopsy. Price was arrested and brought to trial in Cardiff. His acquittal regarded as a legal and legitimate method of disposal of a corpse. The founders of Woking Crematorium were well pleased with the judge's decision, since prior to this time they had to content themselves with experimental cremation of animals. In 1879, a horse was reduced to ashes in less than 2 hours. The minimum smoke and smell. The first human cremation at Woking was carried out in March 1885. That Mrs. Jeanette Carolyn Pickersgill of Regent's Park, who had died aged 71 of bronchopneumonia and asthma. Many famous people followed Mrs. Pickersgill to Wilkins, including Sir Isaac Pitman, inventor of shorthand, Dr. Bernardo, founder of homes for underprivileged children, and the Marquis of Queensberry, who formulated the rule of boxing. In 1934, an open-air cremation took place at Wilkins, when the body of Shamsher Jung, a Nepalese princess, was burned in accordance with Hindu religious rites. The first cremation in modern times of a member of the British royal family was that of Princess Louise, daughter of Queen Victoria, who had died in 1943. So here we have a cutaway diagram to illustrate the working of the early crematorium. So here's the picture on that. Cremation in Britain today. I wonder why my camera's not as clear on my phone as it is right here, but it's looking better now. Weird. In Britain, cremation has overtaken burial as the most popular form of disposal of the dead. Use is made of oil or gas-fired furnaces to reduce a body in about 1.5 hours. The body water evaporates and the tissues are incinerated in ashen bone, roughly 6 pounds for an average-sized adult. The bone fragments are later pulverized by machine into a fine powder. At the beginning of the century, a body was usually taken out of its coffin before being incinerated. Today, the body is cremated in the coffin. The ashes from the coffin, because of their lightness, pass up through the flue. Metal parts of the coffin can be raked out after incineration is complete. The more usually the brass handles of a coffin destined for cremation are made of plastic and are therefore totally combustible. The ashes are collected in a container and can be stored in an urn in a columbarium or scattered, depending on the wishes of the deceased. Care is taken to ensure that ashes from different individuals are kept separate, and great vigilance is exercised with the bodies of children, where the quantity of ashes may be small. And it's funny, so my mom was buried, but my dad was cremated. And one of the things I wondered about was the titanium rod in his leg. And they're like, no, who knows what they did with it. But yeah, the ashes, they say they grind them pretty fine, but you can see like little chunks of bone and stuff. One of the coolest cremation stories, I have to say. And it's not cool that this person did what he did, but we actually climbed a mountain on the San Juan Mountains, I believe. We call them the La Platas. But there's a little place up there that is made of rocks, and it kind of looks like a kiva. But at the same time, it's just like this round structure, and they even made little cubbies where you can leave letters and different things like that. But we all spread the ashes of our friend Dizzo, and the very last person to spread the ashes was his old lady. And when she did it, I swear to God, I saw this. She spread the ashes, and the wind had been blowing and everything. Sorry, there's a beetle in my room. I know there's beetles back here, but there's actually a beetle up here on my mic. Kind of funny. I wonder what kind of music he's playing. But anyways, like when she spread his ashes, it kind of woofed up, and I swear to God, I saw him. I saw his form, and he just like reached out and kind of caressed her face, and then he was gone. But that to me was pretty extraordinary. Cremation in the United States. The USA has never had the land shortage problems that have bedeviled the sanitary disposal of dead in Europe. Ironically, the first cremation in America predated that in Rome by 7 years. In Britain. In 1876, Dr. Julius Lemoyne a doctor in Washington, Pennsylvania, allowed people to use the crematorium he had constructed for his own disposal. Many theories have been put forward to explain the American aversion to cremation. They include the erroneous notion that embalming procedures preserve the body indefinitely, that American funeral directors have a financial stake in elaborate burials and memorials, and that in some way, cremation necessarily involves shortened recall by the bereaved. The increasing acceptance of cremation in the USA may be connected to the greater attention now being given to memorialization of ashes. It is no coincidence that the enthusiasm of the American funeral directors for cremation is directly proportional to the amount of money set aside for memorialization. Commercial considerations, only disguised by a talk of health hazards and posthumous indignity, forbid the scattering of ashes in many American states. That's weird. The Internment Association of America has stated, the only proper disposition of cremated remains is internment in a niche, a vault, or an urn garden, or in a recognized place for the internment of human dead. There is little financial gain to be caught from scattering ashes to the four winds or into the ocean. Funeral directors who are apt to think in terms of dollars also see no profit in encouraging such simple practices as scattering ashes into the earth to be absorbed by the roots of a sapling. And if a tree partly composed of atoms of a loved one is not a commercial proposition, how much less is the idea of incorporating the atoms inside oneself? There is a historical precedent for such an idea. Artemisia, the wife of Mausolus, sprinkled his ashes in wine and drank mixture, thereby inextricably uniting her with her husband. By comparison, the Tibetan custom of casting the ashes into medallions appears almost orthodox. Sati, burn me, burn my wife. I have a gross story about my dad's ashes and my brother, but I don't think I'll share that. But yeah, they kind of became one, in a sense. Very weird, but people do, just to feel closer to somebody. So in most cultures, a man's status at death can be measured by the ostentatiousness of his funeral and the magnificence of his tomb. In India, before the early 19th century, the status of Hindu men might be gauged by the number of wives who accompanied them to the funeral pyre. Vern often threatens that, he's going to have a pyramid built for himself, but it'll be like a mini one, and when he's buried, I'm going to be buried with him, but that ain't happening. Maybe I'll put Herc in there. I don't know. So in British India in 1829, sati, the name given to the barbarous practice of the immolation of wives, was decreed to be only culpable homicide, punishable by fine or imprisonment. Nothing so eloquently testified to the lowly social status of women than an expectation that they should not outlive their husbands. After death, to be forgotten in one's own right may be a painful prospect. To be remembered only as the wife of one's husband is infinitely more ignominious. There is considerable speculation about the origin of sati. Some authorities claim that it emanated from the deliberate tampering with Hindu scriptures. The original version ran, "Rachantu Danayo Yonim Agre." Let the mothers advance to the altar first. By a minor alteration, the line becomes "Arachantu Janayo Yonim Agne." Let the mothers go into the womb of fire. One anthropologist, Max Mueller, dubbed this celebrated change of text perhaps the most flagrant instance of what can be done by an unscrupulous priesthood. Advocates of sati were quick to point out that 4 of Krishna's wives and 4 of Vasudev's wives joined their lords on the pyre. Hooey. Despite such precedents, the practice was never universal, being concentrated mainly in the Ganges Valley and Punjab, the southern India. Numbers also varied from 1 or 2 wives through the 64 women who burned with Raja Ajit Singh or Jaipur in 1780, and reports from Portuguese missionaries of the sacrifice of 11,000 women on the death of a South Indian Raja. In 1818, the Maharaja of Jaipur, to dispel any notion of sexual bias, was accompanied by 18 women and an equal number of men, including a barber sent to shave his lord in the next world. Could you imagine? Hey Truzo, you like my bunny ears? I want to get some darker ones so it matches my hair, but I found it a bit frisky. Oh, this is your first one, William? Well, welcome. Welcome. I hope you're not offended by this book. It's kind of yucky sometimes. Like, we're talking about women being buried with their, or burned with their husbands. It's kind of interesting, intriguing, and, you know, I know Vikings, like, you know, they'd be set off to sail, and, you know, somebody would put a burning arrow into it, and it would catch fire, but, you know, that's kind of romantic, but, I don't know. To be burned with a guy, even this poor barber went through this. I'm just like, ooh, E.T. shame. Oh my gosh. Okay, so yeah, it's not sexual bias because barber went too. So variations on the custom included a mother's sati, whereby a mother mounted her son's pyre, and sister sati. Like, seriously? Do you really have to die because you died too? I don't think so. Honey bunny child. The actual form of the ceremony was also variable. Some widows would sit with their husband's head on their lap, and then sit in the fire themselves. Others were tied to their husbands, because, yeah, they weren't going with that either. Trudeau, is the sound okay? Is the music too loud? Let me know what you think. So, yeah, some were tied to them. So, let's see. What the heck? Oh my gosh. Others were tied to their husbands. Some would jump from a scaffold into the pyre after it had been lit. The scaffold could be tilted at the first sign of reluctance. It's like, there you go. Because it was bad luck to hear any sounds of pain, the assembled crowd would obligingly chant fortissimo. Motivation for immolation was yet another variable. Some wives were so keen on dispatching themselves when they received news of their absent husband's death that they were incinerated long before his eventual safe return. Any reluctance to commit sati was seen as a slur on the family's honor, and such a disgrace could wound the pride of a bereaved son. In 1796, near Calcutta, a wife was duly fastened to the pile, but in the darkness disentangled herself from her dead husband, crept from under the pile, and hid in the bushes. Smart girl. Oh my goodness, that sounds like me. That's what I would do. I'm just gonna creep out of here and then move to the next town. Okay, so. Oh my goodness. As soon as her escape was detected, the relatives searched for and soon found her. Her son insisted that she mount the pyre, drown herself, or hang herself in order to preserve the family name. She pleaded with him, but to no avail. He and the other relatives tied their hands and feet and threw her into the flames, where she quickly perished. Other reluctant wives were also piled with heavy doses of narcotics to lessen resistance and to induce a spurious acceptance. Often, there were secular rather than religious reasons for the continuance of sati. By her death, a mother ceased to be a financial burden on her son, but such base motives had to be rationalized and aggrandized by a culture that at the time regarded widowhood as sinful, and which endeavored to persuade surviving spouses that life without husbands was so desolate and miserable that burning to death was infinitely preferable. I don't think so. Hello, beautiful sister Sandra. Thanks, Truzel. You're my sound guy. Oh my god, like, this is a pyramid, like Vern said, that I have to be buried with him in. I don't think so, Vern. Not gonna do it. Maybe I'll bury your dog with you, but not to me. So, the business of being remembered, and this is chapter 3. I'm pretty serious, there's only 3 chapters in this book. Could be section 3? I'm not sure. Let me look over here and see. Oh, nobody's in here. I forgot to welcome everybody over here. Sorry, welcome crew. Oops. Space W-A-B-M. Oh goodness. That went bad. Happy Easter, you guys. I hope you guys ate a lot of good food and enjoyed your family. Hope you got your ears on and I'm not by myself. But if I am, it's okay. You're forgiven. So it is the lot of most of us to be buried or burned and to have our remains interred in a municipal cemetery. In the fashion of the times, our lives will be condensed into a name, a date of birth, a date of death, and a number for the cemetery staff to identify the site in their registers. Chances are very high that our memorial will be similar to those on either side, made of the same material, of the same design and shape, with the same lettering. Only the names will be different. The striking conformity and monotony of the stones found in modern cemetery are in stark contrast to the sheer variety of memorials to be seen and appreciated in any Victorian burial place. An even more poignant contrast is between the ordered precision of today's crematorium plaques and comforting disorder of a British churchyard. Oh, sorry, somebody just messaged me. In parish churches, the earliest tombs date back to the 12th century and take the form of simple stone slabs, known as ledgers, laid over the corpses of church dignitaries. Inscriptions were in Latin. Table tombs were created when ledgers were raised up on legs. The chest tomb is a table tomb with its sides and ends filled in to provide extra surfaces for inscriptions and decoration. Many do not realize that chest tombs are hollowed and that corpse is interred underground. When such tombs suffer damage as a result of storm or vandalism, the curious are disappointed at not catching sight of coffins or skeletons. The commonest of upright monuments is the simple inscribed tombstone. The variations include pedestal tombs, obelisks, and miniature pyramids. As Vermont's. We'll see. Crosses were a comparative rarity before the second half of the 19th century. Monument and cross came together in King Edward I's remembrance of his beloved wife, Eleanor of Castile. When the Queen died in Grantham in 1290, Edward broke off his campaign against the Scots in order to accompany the body back to London. The journey took 13 days, and at every stop over, Edward vowed to erect a monument cross in memory of his wife. Some say 13 crosses once existed. Others believe no more than 9 were once. Only 3 Eleanor crosses remain at Northampton, Geddington, and Waltham Cross. A replica of the original now stands at Charing Cross, London. Eleanor's final stop before interment at Westminster Abbey. The more unusual the memorial, the more likely the corpse beneath will be remembered by subsequent generations, who would remember Squire Fuller were it not for his memorial in Brightling, Sussex. Nothing quite prepares the visitor for the sight of a huge Egyptian pyramid rising up from an English churchyard. Mad Jack Fuller made a deal with a local vicar who had financed the building of the new church wall in exchange for permission to construct a 25-foot pyramid in the churchyard. When he died in 1834 at the age of 77, Fuller was duly interred beneath his pyramid, built 24 years before in readiness to receive his corpse. Fanciful stories abound concerning the pyramid. Some suggested that Fuller, all 22 stone of him, was interred, sitting at a table, dressed for dinner. Are you serious? Wearing a top hat, and hold on, where am I? And quaffing claret. Some suggested that Fuller, all 22 stone of him, I already did that one. The floor was rumored to be strewn with broken glass in order to keep the devil at bay. Unfortunately, the story is fabrication. Fuller lies horizontally beneath the floor of the tomb, probably the only conventional thing this eccentric politician ever did. So here's a pyramid, and I showed this to you before, but we'll do it again. In an English country churchyard, the tomb of the eccentric John Mad Jack Fuller, 1757 to 1834, at Brightling, East Sussex. The surrounding countryside is peppered with other architectural follies built by Fuller. So yeah, there you see it again. Like, look at that pyramid. It's interesting. I wonder if they cap the top with gold like other pyramids are. Another truly memorable memorial is Sir Richard Burton's tent in the Catholic churchyard at St. Mary Magdalene of Mortlake, South London. Burton, born 1821, dying 1890, was the archetypal Victorian adventurer. Heavily disguised, he was the first white man to enter Mecca. In the Crimean War, he commanded the Turkish cavalry in 1856. With John Speck, he was unsuccessful in his attempt to discover the source of the Nile. When he died in 1890, his wife, Lady Isabel, the same woman who went to such great lengths to make sure she was not buried alive and who, some maintain, accelerated her husband's death by refusing to give him medicines without a doctor being present. This despite his plea, Quipus, chloroform, ether, or I am a dead man. He was hoping for the ether by now. Applied to have him join Speck and Livingston in Westminster Abbey. Permission was refused, probably because of Burton's translations of books about the sexual habits of primitives, including the Perfumed Garden and Kama Sutra. St. Paul's Cathedral was no more forgiven. Eventually, it was proposed to build an enormous stone tent in order to honor this remarkable man. Lady Burton was delighted and regularly held seances in the tent right up until her own death. The entrance to the tent was blocked up in 1951 after the monument was damaged by vandals. What is less well known is that at the rear of the tent is a ladder, which gives access to a window in the roof through which can be seen an interior bedecked with hanging camel bells, an altar, and the gilt coffins of Burton and his wife. Sometimes people are remembered not so much by eccentricity of design as by eccentricity of location. Sir Joshua Danvers, death in 1953, lies in a chest tomb in the churchyard of Swiftland, Leicestershire. Or to be more accurate, half of Sir Joshua lies within the churchyard and half without, since the church wall bisects his tomb. That's creepy. The explanation is quintessentially English. Sir Joshua wanted to be buried close to his beloved dog, and since dogs were not allowed to be interred in the consecrated ground, a compromise was struck whereby the hound was buried at his master's feet, but safely outside the churchyard. Yet another sure way to be remembered long after death is to be buried other than horizontal and face up. Ben Jonson, born 1572, dying at 1637, is remembered for more than his poetry. Tradition relates that he asked King Charles I to grant him a favor concerning his burial. "Give me 18 inches of square ground." "Where?" asked the king. "Well, in Westminster Abbey." And so it was. Johnson was buried upright. I think I heard about this. Like, some paranormal investigators have gone there, but this guy is buried upright. He is standing up. Like, I guess he's ready to go to war. I'm not sure. Okay, so he was buried upright in the north aisle of the Abbey. Cynical doubts about the accuracy of the story were dispelled in 1849 when a grave was being dug to receive Sir Robert Wilson. The loose earth of Johnson's grave rippled in like quicksand, and a clerk saw the 2 leg bones fixed bolt upright in the sand. There are many accounts, usually apocryphal, about who or those who have been buried head down in order to be the right way up when all turns topsy-turvy on the Day of Judgment. Such burial of a French soldier, Major Labelliere, took place on Box Hill in Surrey. The story related about Richard Hole is definitely fantasy. It was said that he lay beneath a tower in Leith Hill, mounted on his horse, both horse and rider being upside down, patiently awaiting judgment. That is so weird. I've never heard that. Superstition also accounts for those who elect to be buried within the walls of a church. It is assumed that these individuals had entered into a pact with the devil whereby he could claim their souls after death, whether the body be buried in a church or out of it. The obvious way to renege on the bargain was to be buried neither outside nor inside a church, but to be shored up as part of the brickwork. Such a burial was that of William Eltrick in Wimborne Minster, Dorset. Waxen images. Sarah Hare will never be forgotten, despite the fact that she died in 1744. Her father decided that his daughter would be commemorated in wax. In Stowe Bardolph Church, Norfolk, Mistress Hare, disarmingly lifelike, stares sternly out of her mahogany case, dressed in her Sunday best. The day of the week is not unimportant, since it was believed that she died as a result of divine retribution. Pricking her thumb while sewing on a Sunday, her waxen effigy, testament of God's commandment to rest on the seventh day. An effigy of an even more illustrious figure is to be seen in the undercroft of Westminster Abbey. There, magnificently regaled, stands King Charles II, proud and aloof. The face was modeled in wax shortly after his death. Keeping him company are King William III and his wife, Queen Mary II, Mary's sister Queen Anne, and sundry Stuart aristocrats. William, a mere 5 feet 6 inches tall, stands on a footstool in order not to appear too diminutive when set next to his 5 foot 11 inch wife. Something he could go up on. Frances Stuart, Duchess of Richmond and Lennox, who died in 1702, looked splendid in the robes she wore to Queen Anne's coronation. Sorry, my back is starting to cramp up. Beside her perches an African gray parrot. I want one of those. which lived with her for 40 years and survived her by only a few days. This is the oldest stuffed bird in Britain. Real effigies made from wood date back as far as the 14th century, to the funeral of Edward II in 1327. The full-length effigy, usually attired in coronation regalia, was placed close to the monarch's coffin. When the coffin was buried, the effigy was exhibited for several weeks before being stored in a chantry chapel of the abbey. The earliest effigy still in existence is that of King Edward III, who died in 1377. Close study of the effigy reveals a drooping mouth on the left side and a flattened left cheek, evidence which suggests that the king's terminal speechlessness was caused by a stroke. The effigy of King Henry VII, died on 1509, had a head modeled in plaster and a body made of canvas and plaster molded over hay. Henry's body remained intact for nearly 450 years before its destruction in World War II. The head still survives. Perhaps the finest example of a wooden effigy is the head of Anne of Denmark, wife of King James the 6th and 1st? What the heck? It says the 6th and /1st. Which one is it? Who died in 1619. The facial detail, including a pimple on the left cheek, probably indicates that the head was modeled from the Queen's death mask. So here we have another picture. The mask of stone tent erected by Isabel Burton to commemorate her husband Sir Richard, African explorer and translator of the Arabian Nights, St. Mary Magdalene Churchyard, Mortlake, London. Oh my gosh, it looks like an actual tent, but I guess that's stone? That's pretty freaking cool. It looks like an actual tent, but it's not. Death masks. The making of an effigy was a lengthy, painstaking, and expensive business. Often, as in the case of Anne of Denmark, time could be saved by the judicious use of a death mask. Sometimes the mask itself proved memorial enough. In the 18th and 19th centuries, many famous persons, and a number of infamous ones too, had their facial features cast in death masks and thereby perpetuated their memory. I'm sorry, there's something tickling my nose. I kind of wish I had my rabbit nose painted on this year. Isn't that crazy? How do you want to? The plaster cast, made as soon after death as possible before the features stiffened, could be used to generate any number of likeness of the deceased. Although the main purpose of such a mask was as a memorial, many 19th century masks were made by phrenologists, pseudoscientists, who believed that one's personality, morality, and intelligence could be gauged by examining the external contours of the skull. Phrenology and post-mortem research into criminality were the reasons why many of the infamous murderers of the 19th century, including William Burke, had death masks made of their features. Interestingly, William Hare, the one who got away by turning king's evidence, had a life mask made during his trial, which is now in Edinburgh University. Something is touching my hair. Oh my gosh, I thought I had a spider on me. One time, just right over here on my desk, it was a brown recluse came charging at me, and then I lost it. Like, I don't know where it went. But yeah, I thought there was a spider on me. Death masks and, oh my god. Something was just touching my leg. Something is touching me! Did you guys see anything? Because, like, I don't see anything, but something just touched my head, and then it touched my left ankle. I actually burned some Palo Santo tonight because it was feeling kind of weird in here. So, I'm hoping that helps, but I think they're kind of like messing with me now. Like, yeah, you thought that Palo Santo worked. Death masks and life masks are made in the same way. To prevent painful adhesions of the plaster to the skin of the face, liberal amounts of oil are first applied. Tubes are inserted into the nostrils of sufficient length to allow them to project beyond the layers of plaster. Threads are laid across the face, and successive layers of plaster are built up and allowed to harden. Particular care is used when applying the plaster around the nose. I see. Oh, now it's gone from my microphone to my desk. Okay, trying to focus. So, applying plaster around the nose, mouth, eyes, and forehead, with every effort being taken to faithfully record every wart and wrinkle. The mask is usually removed in 3 pieces, with the help of the silken threads previously laid against the face. To cast the back of the skull, get away, beetle. The head, covered by a bathing cap to protect the hair, is pushed back into a dish of plaster. Some people become frightened when the plaster begins to harden. Others experience little or no discomfort. John Keats risked spoiling his life mask by his incessant giggling. He couldn't quit laughing. It is not always possible accurately to distinguish between a life mask and a death mask. In some lucky individuals, the contentment of life is not dissimilar to the initial serenity of death. This was certainly true of Mendelssohn, whose death mask assumed an almost glorified expression. So much he looked like one in sleep that some of his friends thought it could not be death. In others, less fortunate, the death spasms remained recorded for posterity, as can be seen by the death masks made of Coleridge and Sheridan. The death mask of Sir Walter Scott clearly shows evidence of the stroke from which he died, and also the autopsy scar, where the top of the skull was sawn off in order to examine the brain. Besides Edinburgh, other important collections are in Princeton University, New Jersey, and Castle Museum, Norwich, and the Black Museum at Scotland Yard. In our own century, the features of those long dead have been conjured up by a mixture of consummate skill and modern technology, by such methods using only the skull of the deceased. Cragg and Neve have been able to construct the faces of people as diverse as Lindau Man referred to in Part 3, Chapter 2, and King Midas. Well, on that note, boys and girls, you have to go to our first music break. On this break, we have Miss Mia Savage with her band Antidote for Savages, and she does all the musical stuff as well as the singing and lyrics. So, yes, brown recluse are bad. That thing charged at me, and then I tried to kill it. It disappeared, and yeah, it scared the shit out of me. Truzido, I'm telling you what. And be with child, like, I have a fear of spiders because I had one dig a hole behind my ear when I was a kid and lay some eggs, but yeah, so. Anywho's, this is Miss Mia Savage with her group Antidote for Savages. She will be singing Your Skeleton, Our New Reality, The Mirroring Crypto. Uh-oh.
Kirk ran away.
Will you guys open the door that got up?
Yeah, out there.
And let me be your home. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this music break.
They went down there. And
Shh.
Dad is already.
to a new reality. You don't need him. All the shit that he brings anymore. You're mine. You're mine. Tonight.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining me this evening on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. Tonight we are reading, we're doing story time, and the book this evening is Death, A History of Man's Fears and Obsessions, and this is by Mr. Robert Wilkins. It's funny that we're coming upon this chapter because before the show I was watching on YouTube paranormal, let me see what it was again. Excuse me. But it was about Masons, and they were about to investigate Mason's Lodge, so that was pretty interesting. Let me see if I can pull it up. So, the Paranormal Files, I don't know if you know those guys, but I love that him and, my ears kind of went wonky. Him and his dad, and sometimes his mom and wife go on there, but most recently it's been him and his dad, and they were talking about Masons earlier and how George Washington and so many other famous people that we do know are Masons, and just their certain construct. Kind of weird, like, I'm trying to pull this up really quick, and it's just not doing it. So I think there's a little bit of a delay. But this part of the chapter is called The Mason's Art. Before the emergence of an affluent middle class, only the clergy and the nobility could afford elaborate burials and memorials. Poor were buried simply, one on top of the other. With increasing national prosperity came the urge to be remembered after death through splendid monuments attesting to the deceased's social status. The skills of monumental masons became highly regarded and much sought after right up to, the era of mass production in the middle of the last century. But having money enough to afford a monument did not guarantee remembrance. Much thought had to be given to the durability of the materials used in monumental construction. Slate, for instance, is one of the most weather-resistant materials, and furthermore, it is easily worked to produce elaborate lettering and reliefs, which are long-lasting and durable. Unfortunately, slate is also regarded as somber and austere, and is little favored outside Cornwall, Leicestershire, North Wales, and the Lake District areas served by nearby quarries. Most people opted to use local stones, some of which weathered very rapidly. In the Cotswolds, where the stone carves well but wears badly, inscriptions are often written on brass plaques, which are then set into the monument. Contrary to the expectation, marble does not wear well and is soon eroded by the wiles of the British climate. Granite is the opposite of marble, durable, very difficult to work, and regarded by most as an aesthetic. The two spectral poles in monumental materials are wood and metal. Besides durability, metal memorials lend themselves to shapes that are very difficult to achieve with stone. A major disadvantage of metal is the difficulty of adding further lettering once the design is cast. Bolted-on panels detract from the elegance of metal memorials. Cemetery symbolism. The preeminent Christian symbol is the cross, but in a monumental context, the crucifix is a comparatively recent innovation. See, why the heck is my camera not going over here? Let me go out of here and go back. Let's go back in time. Go over here and see if this is working, because holy Nikes. Oh, there we are. It's working. Okay, so let's see. Prior to the Victorian era, pagan themes predominated, skulls and crossbones far outnumbering crosses. elaborate and ornate memorials are remembered longer, albeit sometimes negatively, than plain and simple stones, recording only name and age. A blueprint for remembrance is the construction of a grotesque and indestructible monument incorporating every conceivable funerary symbol, both pagan and Christian. At Burton Lazars in Leicestershire is a monument that would appear to have a lot: urns, orbs, snakes, angels, pyramids, and obelisks. The dead man, William Squire, a local weaver, wished that any money left over after the erection of his monument be spent on the education of the village poor. In fact, the monument cost so much that the children of Burton Lazars continued uneducated. At Hardenhuish in Wiltshire, the magnificent monument to David Ricardo MP represents the best of the classical style. Erected in 1823, it consists of 4 naked youths. Even close inspection makes gender uncertain, striking mournful poses around a Corinthian column. This unashamedly pagan monument in its Christian setting ensures the remembrance of Ricardo in the minds of all who came to admire. Some memorials attract attention in ways that were not intended by the deceased. It is probably no coincidence that the Nightingale Memorial in Westminster Abbey is now hidden behind stacked chairs in a part of the building that normally open to the public. The monument shows Joseph Nightingale vainly trying to ward off the specter of death, which is intent on claiming his young wife. Skeletal Death, spear in hand, rises up to carry off his prize. It's a terrifying aspect and has frightened many generations. Tradition records that a robber coming into the abbey at moonlight was so startled by the monument that he fled in terror, leaving his crowbar on the pavement. Remembrance can induce negative sentiments. 2 famous desecrated tombs are to be found in Père Lachaise Cemetery in Paris, and a burial ground full of stray cats and graffiti. The grave of Jim Morrison, American pop musician and member of the group The Doors, is so regularly daubed with multicolored spray paint that, for this very reason, it has become one of the cemetery's most frequently visited plots. The famous memorial to Oscar Wilde has also attracted the attention of vandals. Close inspection of Jacob Epstein's winged sphinx reveals that the creature has had its genitals removed by hammer and chisel. Tradition has it that the sight of such a large member so offended the sensitives of 2 English ladies that they resolved to remove the offended organ. Some say that it is still used as a paperweight in the cemetery office. So here we have a picture, a view inside the tent showing the coffins of Sir Richard and Lady Burton amid a mixture of Christian and Islamic symbolism. Let me move my fingers. Pretty interesting. Some consider that their death and dispatch are too important an event to leave to the wiles of others. Charles V, from 1500 to 1558, Holy Roman Emperor, rehearsed his funeral many times before participating in the real thing. He ordered that his tomb be erected in a monastery chapel and had his servants march in procession, each with a black taper in his hand. Charles followed behind dressed in a shroud. As the service began and the hymn struck up, the emperor would lie in the coffin, joining in the prayers offered up for his immortal soul. The priest would sprinkle holy water over him as he wept with emotion. The ceremony over, the congregation would silently file out and shut the doors behind them. A little while later, Charles would rise from his coffin and make for his bed. Another famous man who had strong views about his funeral was the Victorian novelist Charles Dickens, 1812 to 1870. his will, he directed that he be buried in an inexpensive, unostentatious, and strictly private manner, that no public announcement be made of the time or place of his burial, that of the utmost no more than 3 plain mourning coaches be employed, and that those who attend my funeral wear no scarf, cloak, black bow, long hat band, or other such revolting absurdity. I direct that my name be inscribed in plain English letters on my tomb without the addition of Mr. Esquire. I conjure my friends on no account to make me the subject of any monument, memorial, or suppose that a proud country would be content with such a low-key farewell to one of its most illustrious writers, in the event Charles Dickens found his house of clay in the soil below Westminster Abbey. An American president tried a simple funeral with much the same success as Dickens. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, 1884 to 1945, detailed his wishes in a 4-page document written in 1937. A simple service to be held in the East Room of the White House, that he should not lie in state, that a gun carriage and not a hearse be used, and that his casket, aka coffin, be of a simple design and made of dark wood, that he was not to be embalmed or hermetically sealed, and that his grave be not lined with bricks, cement, or stones. FDR's mistake was to place his instructions in a private safe, where they were discovered a few days after his funeral. In the event Roosevelt was embalmed, was placed in a hermetically sealed coffin made of fine bronze-colored copper, and then was conveyed in a Cadillac hearse to a cement-lined vault. At least he did not lie in state. It need not always be the case that one's final words on earth are those that adorn a tombstone or memorial plaque. Last words can be delivered verbally rather than cast physically, and need not necessarily be ephemeral as a consequence. Much depends upon the import given to them by those gathered around to listen. Deathbed piety and patriotism are common, but not infrequently famous examples of last words are characterized by humor, self-effacement, and aptness or incongruity. Memorable last words can crown a famous life or call attention to an otherwise undistinguished one. One of the problems with the last word is that, apart from suicides and those condemned to death by others, none of us knows when the end will come. Many will simply deny the imminence of death. Others, recognizing the paramount need for economical use of time, will choose to put mundane matters before more portentous reflections on the nature of death or the existence of an afterlife. Sadly, such husbandry, even when voiced by the famous or infamous, is seldom memorable. Further, there is more than a little suspicion that many of the last words attributed to eminent men and women have been altered, exaggerated, or simply invented by others, often to show the deceased in a better or worse light. In reality, most of us will die too exhausted to be bothered with anything more memorable than a groan or a goodbye. For those who take the trouble to compose and rehearse a parting speech, it is likely that fate, Capricus to the last, will contrive that there is no one within earshot to hear and record it, or understand it. When Albert Einstein died in 1955, his last words were spoken in his native German, a language that none of his friends could understand, as he died in the United States. Two examples which call into question the accuracy and authenticity of last words concern a politician and a king. William Pitt, 1759-1806, became prime minister at the age of 24. Accounts of his last words vary from the patriotic to the alimentary. Most report the statement as having said, "Oh, my country, how I love my country." Sentiments befitting such an eminent statesman. Yet a later Prime Minister, Benjamin Disraeli, has Pitt saying, "I think I could eat one of Bellamy's veal pies." A similar diversity of George V, 1865 to 1936. Most of the king's biographers have him inquiring, "How is the empire?" But there's another version. When the king was taken ill in 1929, he convalesced at Bunor, a seaside resort in Sussex. When, in his final illness, his doctor tried to revive his spirits by saying, "We'll soon have you back in Bunor, sire," the king's reply was pithy, "Bugger Bunor. Bugger it." Three very different versions of Christ's last words have come down to us. St. Mark has Jesus saying, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" St. Luke's version is, "Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit." St. John's is the simplest, "It is finished." Many have attempted to categorize the wide variety of final words. Probably the largest number can be subsumed under the rubric, "The end is nigh." They are rarely noteworthy and include such lame efforts as Lord Byron in 1824. "Now I shall go to sleep." Carl Maria von Weber, musician, 1826. "Now let me sleep." Lawrence Sterne, author of Tristram Shandy, 1768. "Now it is come." Felix Mendelssohn, composer, 1847. "Weary, very weary." And Franz Schubert, composer, 1828. "Here, here is my end." To simply Goodbye of William Hudson, the American author who died in 1922. It is to be expected that some would die ill, at ease, others happy and accepting. Oliver Goldsmith, 1774, author of The Vicar of Wakefield, was asked whether his mind was at ease. He answered, "No, it is not." Gerard Manley Hopkins, 1889, poet and scholar, exited with very different emotions. "I am so happy, so happy." William Hunter, doctor and embalmer, died weary but happy in 1783. "If I had the strength to hold a pen, I would write how easy and pleasant it is to die." Boredom is much less predictable sentiment. Somerset Maugham, the British novelist who died in 1965, commented dryly, "Dying is a very dull, dreary affair, and my advice to you is to have nothing whatever to do with it." Lytton Strachey, 1932, was even more direct. "If this is dying, I don't think much of it." Religious last words run the whole gamut from Jesus, Joan of Arc, 1431, through Jesus Mary, Earl of Arundel, 1580, to Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Elizabeth Seton, 1821. There are abundant quotations from the scriptures, that most popular being variations upon "Into thy hands, O Lord, I commit my spirit." Christopher Columbus, 1506. The Roman Emperor Vespasian, AD 79, commented, "Dear me, I must be turning into a god." The thesis that a religious faith can make dying easier is attested to by Joseph Addison, the British essayist, 1719. "See in what peace a Christian can die." But Voltaire, in 1778, philosopher and atheist, observed, "God naturedly as he watched the flickering of a candle. The flames already." Predictably, patriotism figures largely in the last words of kings, politicians, and soldiers. King George V, 1936, worried about the British Empire. Pitt the Younger, 1806, about England. Pierre Laval, 1945, about France. Napoleon, 1821, about France, his army, and Josephine, in that order. while von Ribbentrop, the Nazi war criminal, went to his death in 1946 asking God to save Germany. Perhaps the most memorable last words are those that are examples of wry humor in the face of death. Anna Pavlova, 1931, the ballerina best remembered for her role as the dying swan, asked those around her to get my swan costume ready. Oh my goodness. The comedian Stan Laurel, in 1965, struck up a terminal banter with his nurse. "I'd rather be skiing than doing this. Do you ski, Mr. Laurel?" "No, but I'd rather be doing that than this." This is reminiscent of W.C. Fields, the film comedian who died in 1946. He commented, "On the whole, I'd rather be in Philadelphia," recalling his aversion to that city. So here we're going back, and this is one of those wax effigies. And this is a wax effigy of Sarah Hare, and she stares out of her glass case in the church of Stowe Bardolph in Norfolk. She died when, wantonly sewing on a Sunday, she pricked her finger. So I wonder if she got some sort of infection or something. But here she is. Look at that. Isn't that creepy? Very creepy. Ooh. What the heck? Chins and all. I can relate. Ease. Unexpected sources. Hold on. So human last words may be intentional or unintentional, true or apocryphal, and from expected to unexpected sources. Oscar Wilde, 1900, observed, "Either this wallpaper goes or I do." I guess he did, because I think the wallpaper is still there. Another 19th century humorist, Thomas Hood, 1845, watched the application of a mustard plaster to his foot. There's very little meat for the mustard. Joel Harris, the American humorist, died in 1908, just after saying, "I am about the extent of a tenth of a gnat's eyebrow better." Unexpected sources of deadly humor include Kathleen Ferrer, opera singer, 1953. "Now I have ein klein Pass." Henry Fox, first Baron Holland, 1774. "If Mr. Selwyn calls again, show him up. If I am alive, I shall be delighted to see him, and if I am dead, he would like to see me." An example of unintentional humor was provided by the death of General Sedgwick, American Civil War commander, 1864, who, peering over a parapet, was heard to observe, "You couldn't hit an elephant at this distance." But he didn't complete the word, he just said, "at this distance." Condemned prisoners frequently have a chance to practice their timing. Neville Heath, hanged in 1946, asked for a glass whiskey. "You might make that a double." William Palmer, the Victorian poisoner, hanged in 1856, stepped onto the gallows and asked, "Are you sure it's safe?" That's a funny one. Ooh. Ned Kelly, the Australian outlaw, hanged in 1880. Such is life. And James Rogers, an American criminal, shot in 1960. When asked if he had any last request, replied, "A bulletproof vest." Oh my gosh. Cherokee Bill, a hoodlum, hanged in 1896, was asked if he had anything to say. "No, I came here to die, not make a speech." Pretty keen on you, buddy. And is deliberate humor or deep philosophy to be gleaned from the last deathbed conversation of Gertrude Stein, the American writer of 1946, who is best remembered for "A rose is a rose is a rose." Stein asked, "What is the answer?" When no answer is given, she laughed and said, "In that case, what is the question?" The most arresting last words are those that conjure up images of childhood behavior. Sir William Osler, 1919, the most eminent physician of his day, said to his doctor, "Nighty-night, darling." But for me, the most poignant by far are the last words of Horace Williams, the American philosopher. When a nurse asked him his name, he replied in a childlike voice, "Horace Williams." Uses of the dead to the living, harvesting cadavers. From the discussion of the diagnosis of death in the chapter on premature burial, good Lord! It is clear that many of the earlier uncertainties can be obviated by the concept of brain death. When the electrical activity of the brain ceases, a person is deemed dead, regardless of whether the heart is still beating or the lungs are still respiring. Succinctly put, anyone whose brain is dead is truly dead. But it follows that such corpses may be kept warm, respiring, pulsating, evacuating the excrete purely by mechanical means. Such cadavers, nourished and groomed, could be kept alive for years, possibly decades. Such living dead would certainly not be forgotten. What purpose could this artificial prolongation of life possibly serve? Many see it as a means by which the dead can continue to be of use to the living. The subject was comprehensively covered by Willard Galen in 1974. He started from the premise that, given the choice, most of us at death would elect to donate our organs to help prolong the life of another. Galen rightly observed that this idea needs some qualification. Harvard Medical School as a surfeit of donors, while cadavers at Boston University are always at a premium. In New England, evidently, the kudos of getting into Harvard extends even to the dissecting table. He envisages the brain dead, neomorphs, pulsating and respiring in specialized wards, bioporia. The uses to which neomorphs can be put are directly proportional to the power of imagination. They can be used to allow junior doctors to practice their liver biopsies, lumbar punctures, or surgical procedures. The efficacy and side effects of new drugs could be tested. Cancers could be induced and subsequently treated. Antibodies could be produced by the injection of poisons, bacteria, and viruses. Organs and tissues could be continually harvested, especially blood products, bone marrow, and skin for grafting. It is arguably whether this altruism would appeal to most people, but what is certain is that such a gesture would combine the need to be remembered with the wish to do some good for others. Here's another wax effigy. Super creepy, like you said centuries ago. So this wax effigy of King Charles II, 1630 to 85, stood near the place of his burial in Westminster Abbey until 1723. He is wearing a black velvet garter hat with a plume of ostrich and heron feathers. Today, the effigy can be seen in the Undercroft Museum in Abbey. Check out this dude. Ain't he debonair? He's still straight pimping it even after death. Look at that guy. He's got the plumage going for sure. Utilitarian postscript. In Père Lachaise Cemetery is an example of the use of the dead to the living. It is the bronze statue of a naked young woman. The statue is discolored with age except the breasts, the boobies, which are highly polished from the caresses of generations of metal palms. Ooh, chapter 5. So I guess it wasn't chapter 3. I guess it was just section 3. The fear of an ignominious death. 1. Regal inns. A good death does honor to a whole life. Petrarch, 1304 to 74. Research has consistently shown that, were we able to choose, the majority of us would opt for a pain-free death, preferably at home in the company of family and friends, who would then make sure we were interred with dignity. Such is the popular conception of a good death. In the Middle Ages, many treatises were written about the art of dying well, ars moriendi. Sudden death, mors improvisa, was considered undignified, although kings and queens were expected to die with special dignity and composure. It is surprising how relatively few of them actually managed to achieve this goal. King Charles II's death was neither sudden nor dignified. He took an unconscionable time dying, the principal player in a tragedy which frequently bordered on a farce. So is that other? Nope, that's a different one. The final days of King Charles II. So first I'm going to go to this picture, and this is a plaster head of King Henry VII, 1457 to 1509. It was proven to be a death mask when, in 1950, it was discovered that one eyebrow showed clotting of the hair by the grease used in taking mold. Only the head remains. The rest of the effigy was destroyed in World War II. Creepy. Look at that guy. Would you do that? I don't think I want that. The final days of King Charles II. The restoration of the monarchy in 1660 replaced the austerity of Oliver Cromwell with the hedonism of that most flamboyant of Stuart kings, Charles II, 1630 to 85. Not everybody welcomed Charles's return, and mainly heartily disapproved of his lifestyle of gluttony, drunkenness, infidelity, and would predict retribution on this desolate king. John Evelyn, the diarist on the day before Charles' fatal illness, writes of inexpressible luxury and profaneness, total forgetfulness of God, the king sitting and toying with his concubines, a French boy singing love songs. Evelyn goes on to record dryly, 6 days after, all was in dust. On the night before his fatal illness, the king, talking about his new palace being built in Winchester, had remarked, "I shall be most happy this week, for my building will be covered in lead." Within a week, Charles lay dead in a leaden coffin. When the king finally retired to bed, his attendants settled down to sleep in an anteroom, together with a dozen spaniels and numerous clocks, which chimed every quarter of an hour throughout the night. When Charles woke on Monday, the 2nd of February, he went as usual to his private closet. A groom noticed that the king was deathly pale, and he rushed off to report to Aylesbury. Aylesbury immediately called for Chiffon's, first page at the back stairs, and the only man allowed to enter Charles's private closet. Eventually, the king was persuaded out of the closet. He remained pale and mute. It was obvious to all that something was very wrong, but everyone was at a loss as what to do. Suddenly Charles had a violent convulsion, and with a cry fell into the arms of Aylesbury. The first decision was whether to bleed the king. If, as was suspected, he had suffered an apoplectic fit, the orthodoxy of the times prescribed immediate bloodletting. Yes, break out the leeches. 16 ounces of blood were taken from Charles's right arm. Attendants held the king's mouth forcibly open to prevent him from biting his tongue, should the convulsions recur. The bloodletting had an immediate beneficial effect, and soon the physicians were plying the king with other remedies popular at the time. More blood was removed by means of deep scarification. A strong antimonal emetic was given to induce vomiting, followed by zinc sulfur. A powerful purge was administered. The king's head was shaved, and blistering preparations were applied to the scalp. Even red-hot cautery was got ready. It was then that Charles was moved into a bed from which he never again arose. Doctors were summoned, and subsequently there were rarely fewer than 12 physicians in attendance. Charles's death is one of the best recorded in history, since there were always doctors, clergymen, ambassadors, and relatives milling around his bed, many of whom left detailed descriptions of the scene. Soon the king was out of immediate danger and was able to tell the assembled dignitaries that when he awoke, he had felt unwell and had gone to the closet to get some king's drops, a volatile extract of bone. The doctors then began to confer on the best way to proceed. It was an unwritten rule that their decisions should appear unanimous. Oh, nighty-night, live and light, Jim. I hope you have a good evening's sleep. Happy Easter once more. It was good to see you in here. So presumably so that the onus for mistakes should be borne by a group and not by an individual. It was agreed that they should try to relieve the pressures of the humerus around the brain. To that end, they administered white hellebore roots to encourage sneezing, a preparation of cowslip flowers, and sal ammoniac was given to strengthen the brain, in order to relieve the scalding of the urine produced by blistering. A draught containing mallow roots, sweet almond kernels, melon seeds, and barley water was given to the king. A gargle made for the inner bark of the elm was administered to soothe the throat, which was inflamed as a result of the forcible separation of the teeth during convulsions. A plaster of pitch and pigeon dung was applied to the royal feet. Might as well. By Tuesday, the omens were looking more propitious. In order to try to prevent further convulsions, a julep of black cherry water was made out of flowers of lime, lilies of the valley, spirit of lavender, and prepared pearls, mixed with white sugar candy to improve the taste. Alas, all to no avail. On the Wednesday evening, the king suffered another violent fit, which produced a deep air of pessimism as regards his chances of eventual recovery. Spirit of human skull was given, a sure harbinger of impending dissolution. Peruvian bark, crude quinine, and syrup of cloves was given on the Thursday morning that the king's condition was now deteriorating rapidly, and rumors began to circulate that he was already dead. Bishop Ken of Bath and Wells absolved Charles of all his sins, but when he offered the sacrament, the king answered that there was time enough to think of that. At 5 o'clock on the Thursday afternoon, Barillon, the French ambassador, had a meeting with the Duchess of Portsmouth, one of Charles's most famous mistresses, the lifelong spy for Louis the, ninth. She told the ambassador that Charles was a secret Catholic and that they must conspire together to think of a way to get a priest to the deathbed to give him the sacrament. James, Duke of York, was first to check with his brother that these were his wishes, and when this was done, the three would lay their plans to admit a Catholic priest under the very noses of the prelates of the Church of England. It was finally agreed that James would ask all but two of the specters to retire to an anteroom, whilst those who remained were placed far enough back so as not to be able to hear what was going on. One difficulty that was overlooked was the problem of finding a priest who could speak English. The Queen's priest spoke only Portuguese, and James only Italian. By pure good fortune, there was a Scots priest, John Huddleston, in the Queen's household. Indeed, he was the very priest who had saved Charles's life after the Battle of Worcester. After the withdrawal of the doctors, clergy, and politicians, Huddleston, disguised in a wig and cassock, gained entry into the king's bedroom by the back staircase. Charles immediately recognized him. "You that saved my body has now come to save my soul." The absolution and sacrament took 3/4 of an hour. The presence of 2 duped Protestant earls successfully allaying the growing suspicions of those who waited in the anteroom. Even with Charles prepared now for his death, the doctors still felt moved to try for a miracle. Cardiac tonics, such as Sir Walter Raleigh's cordial, were given, comprising in part seeds, herbs, spices brought from South America, and mixed with coral, pearl, oil of vitriol, hartshorn, ambergris, musk, and sugar, followed by go stone and a draught of broth, more quinine bark, yet more salt stomach of the eastern goat, bezoar stone, a sort of gallstone from the stomach of the eastern goat, widely used as an antidote to poison. Charles submitted to this medicinal onslaught with resignation and good humor, apologizing to the company for taking so long to die. He continued politely to refuse Bishop Kin's urgings to take the sacrament. At 6 o'clock on the Friday morning of the 6th of February, the king had the curtains drawn back to enable him to watch the sunrise for the last time. He asked that the 8-day clock be wound. At 7 a.m., he became suddenly breathless and was bled to 12 ounces and given further cardiotonics. Mercifully, he died just before noon. He was buried at night without any manner of pomp, and soon forgotten, after all his vanity. His effigy can still be seen in the Undercroft Museum in Westminster Abbey. Thus reposes one of the most popular and less deserving of the monarchs. So I think that's the guy in the feathers. Is it this guy? King Henry. Anywho, on that note, boys and girls. Oh my gosh, you hear that pooch? It is time. Yeah, eek! It is time for our second break. So on this break, once more, we have Miss Mia Savage with her group Antidote for Savages. She will be singing one of my favorites, Bury Me in Heaven, as well as Not a Phase and Singing to Your Grave. You guys, I think there's one more. Yep, and the bottom line, there it is. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this music break.
no savings account. Just a choice right now between fear and love. Choice right now between fear and love.
Goodness gracious, I swear to God. Tell it does be quiet, but you're hacking them up. Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining me this evening on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. So, this evening we've been reading from Robert Wilkins' Death, History of Man's Obsessions and Fears. It's been pretty cool. I thought we were going to finish the book tonight, but you know, the print's a little small, so it takes a little bit more time, right? Thank you, Truzado, Mr. Morris, Miss Sandy from BC, Vancouver. Everybody that's come out tonight to listen, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I might be like Mrs. Easter Bunny, I don't know. But for the third hour, we shall commence with Reddit ghost stories. You guys ready, guys? So this one is called Shadows and Lights, and it's from you/Tristan P911. Around 2 months ago, I started watching abandoned exploration videos and started noticing weird noises at night, but brushed it off and said it was the videos playing tricks on me. But more recently, I stopped watching those videos and still kept hearing them. But after a while, I kept seeing a shadowing at the corner of my doorframe that looked human the first night I saw it. It kept peering over and disappearing, but on day 6, on the day of 6, or the 6th day of it, it stopped disappearing even more recently. I stared, watching a YouTuber who reacts to scary things, and now my LED lights that keep my room lit have started to turn off every time the video says anything from the disturbing videos that say things like, I'm in walls, and other things like that. I've started to not like staying up late anymore, and at every chance I close my door. Yeah, I actually burned some Palo Santo in here tonight because things were feeling a bit creepy. Let's turn down the lights a bit. This light's getting a little hot. And this one is by u/Depardin123. My house is haunted. I am a 15-year-old male and a firm believer in ghosts and whatnot. I moved into my house when I was 8 years old, and it seemed like a normal house, but I felt like I've been there before. I knew there were, and whatever it was, and everything was super familiar, even though I've never set foot in the house. A few months later, I had dreams of me wandering the house. These dreams probably don't mean anything, but every couple nights I would get a dream of me wandering the house, and these dreams felt like hours. Hours and hours and hours. Where the heck did it go? The dream stopped. Okay, so hold on. I'm trying to find where I left off. In these dreams, I never felt alone, and whenever I turned my head, I would see something peeking at me. The dream stopped after a while, but I always felt like I wasn't alone in a room. My dog would bark at corners in the house, and my older sister claimed to feel something living in her room. Nothing really happened in the house until a couple years ago. When I was 13, I always thought I heard whispering whenever I was alone in the house. I've always been paranoid, so I thought it was just in my head. Then I saw shadows when no one was around. Objects like balls would roll on their own. I thought it was just the wind moving them, but the dogs would come up and bark at something next to the ball. Other objects would be in a different place, like a stuffed animal or a TV remote. I also heard running and footsteps sometimes, always running to my location in the house. I would try to tell my family about all this stuff, but only my older sister believed me. The stuff that I was seeing never happened to her, but she could feel a presence in her room at times. But one of the weirdest things happened when I moved into the room downstairs. Don't do it! Don't move into the attic. Don't move into the room upstairs. Like, this lighting is not good. Is that better? I feel better because you can't see all the luggage under my eyeballs. The room in our basement is the biggest room in our house, and since I'm the last kid living at home, my parents decided to give it to me. That's so nice of them. There's a back door down there that connects to a dog area that I keep locked to because it makes me feel safe. Sometimes I'll exit through that door to pick up dog poop or something different. Most of the time, I'll lock the back door, but out a dozen times I have forgotten. When I do forget to lock the door, I'm getting ready to go to sleep. I'll hear this sort of tapping. The tapping only happens when the door is unlocked. At first, the tapping sounds like it's outside, but when I get up and go to the door to investigate, it sounds like the tapping is coming from somewhere else. When I lock the door, the tapping stops immediately. I don't know if this is some reminder telling me to lock the door or something else entirely. Keep in mind, most of this stuff happens when I'm all alone. It only happens to me, and if I am with someone and I hear whispers or footsteps, nobody else can hear it. I don't know if this is a friendly ghost or something malicious, but it hasn't hurt anyone. But if it is, either it's targeting me, since I'm the only one who this happens to, or something else is going on. I think this house is also fairly new, and has had only one other family, but no one in that family died. My sister says it could be the ghost of my biological dad. I'm adopted, and he passed away when I was a baby, but I don't think it's him. Makes me wonder. It acts like my seashell earrings. My girl Tassie gave these to me. She's like, do you want these? They're kind of too big for my face. And I'm like, well, I got a big head, so I could totally wear these. I like it, like the blue and pink and everything. So this one's called Lamp Ghost, and it's by u/Mythica_0. Just sharing a little story. For the past month or two, every night, anywhere from 9:30 to 12:30, my lamp clicks. For context, I have a lamp that has like a little switch on the base that makes a loud click when you turn it off or on. Every night, at some point within the above time frame, my lamp makes the click, but doesn't turn on or off. It only happens once a night, so I know it's not like something else making the sound, and I already have met at least one ghost. I even know what they look like, but I'm not sure if it's the same one. Added to this is that my cats like to just stare at the wall or ceiling near my lamp. I usually take the sound as the ghost telling me to go to bed, laugh out loud, but just a little experience I have. If anyone would like to add on their own experiences, feel free. This one is by u/infamous-benefit7825. Sorry, my nose. I have like a head thing. I was blowing my nose today, and as I blew my nose, I could just feel the pressure up in my head. I think I have a sinus infection. Last week, I posted about waking up to a shadow man standing over my bed that even my wife saw. I had a decent amount of upvotes fairly fast, but deleted the post within hours out of fear that acknowledging and discussing it would make it worse. 2 days after I made the initial post, we had 2 more unusual experiences. The first was in the morning. My wife got out of bed to get ready for the day and put her son's baby blanket, who passed away a few weeks old from a terminal illness last year, next to my neck. I was awake but scrolling on my phone for a few minutes before getting out of bed, and the baby blanket slid off my neck and onto the bed. A few minutes later, while I'm still in bed, my wife walks into the room from the kitchen with the blanket in her hand, asking me how it got onto the kitchen table. It was impossible for either of us to have done it, as she left the blanket with me and left the room, and I never got out of bed. It teleported somehow, but he just said he got out of bed. Let me go back. Okay, so before getting out of bed, it slid off. Then it went into the kitchen. Okay. So the second was when we got home from therapy that night, where we met with other parents who have lost a child. We walked in the house, and a flashlight was in the middle of the kitchen floor, turned on and pointed at the ceiling. We were totally creeped out, but put it back in its drawer and went on with our night. Tonight, I just finished cleaning the garage. Walk in the house and up the stairs into the kitchen. I look in the fridge for a quick bite to eat, then look over at the wall next to the stairs, and I saw the Shadow Man in the exact spot he was in my dream before I woke up to him in my bedroom the other night. The only thing is, it was my own shadow cast on the wall. And that shadow can only occur because the light above the stairs just burned out. And it will only be there when just the light above our sink is on. Really creeped me out when I realized this, and the hair stood up on the back of my neck. Kind of wondering if the Shadow Man could be me from the future trying to tell me something. Kind of like a movie like Interstellar. We've had many experiences, but one we had a year ago sticks out right now. I was in the basement having a few drinks with a couple friends, and the light above our bar switched off. It's a mechanical switch and nobody was within 20 feet of it. I'm not an alcoholic, but if I were future me trying to give present me a sign to stop drinking, that would be it. So maybe another sign is future me. In the event that it's not me, I did take the advice of a few comments made on my initial post, and no longer fear this thing, and have voiced that it is unwelcome unless it is one of my beloved ones coming back to visit. I know most of you here have had many experiences of your own, so feel free to share anything that you have experienced with shadow men, the loss of loved ones, etc. Thank you. Yeah, and that's the main thing, like, as far as the shadow man goes, you can't fear him because that's what he feeds off of, so don't do it. Don't do it. This one is by you/Pringlemaster99. Shadow next to my bed. Sorry if I spell things wrong or my punctuation isn't great. I will try my best. When I was around 5 or 6, I was trying to sleep in my bed, but I felt really off-put. I tossed and turned for around an hour, but I couldn't go to sleep. I decided to go into my parents' room and if I could sleep with them. My dad was asleep, but my mom said I could sleep there. She moved over and I got in bed. I still felt really off. I turned over and saw a man standing there watching me and my parents, not talking or moving, just still. It looked similar to King Ramesses from Courage the Cowardly Dog, but all shadow. I turned around again facing my mom, still terrified. After some time, I turned back and it was gone. No sign of it anywhere. I've spoken to people about this and they just say I was making up, or it could have been my dad, but he was laying in the bed because I heard him snoring. This one is by you/Hypeman111. Back in 2020, I got shot in the chest and almost died. Because of this gunshot wound, I spent almost a month at LA General Hospital. I felt a lot of paranormal activity while I was there. For example, there would be times when it sounded like I had roommates and there would be nobody. But this vision I had will forever stick with me. It was a first-person point of view vision, meaning I was experiencing or reliving this incident. Anyways, here's what happened in the vision. The setting was LA by the way people were dressed. It was in the 90s. I was with a buddy and we were cruising Pacific Avenue in Huntington Park, California. It was getting late and we had made a turn to a street where some gang members were blocking the street. They saw we didn't belong there and they started shooting into the car. I got hit on the top of my head as we were escaping. I touched the top of my head and I felt a broken skull/a hole. I started crying and telling the person driving to take me to the hospital. I died before we could make it to the hospital. This vision felt real, just as if I had lived it. And this happened while I was awake. Anyone ever had visions like this? Is resetting me. But I have heard stories like this, and so people who like die or have near-death experiences or like die for a few moments or whatnot, when they come back, a lot of times there's something attached to them. So I don't know. Ooh, this one's kind of creepy. So this is by u/successful_being_857. The other mommy. When my daughter was almost 3, she was in her new bed on the opposite side of the room that she and her little brother, my son 1, shared. She asked me where the other mommy was. I was confused as she hadn't been in daycare since she was 6 months old, wasn't in any sort of program, and I was a stay-at-home mom. I asked her what she was talking about, and she said sometimes she sees her other mommy. I didn't press and just let it go and told her good night. I mean, she wasn't even 3 yet, didn't watch TV, and mostly just played with toys. And we went to parks occasionally. That was the extent to her world thus far. Talk of the other mommy went on for about 6 months, but the hands talk went on for another year. She hated the wall that her bed was against. She talked about the scary hands coming out of her wall at least twice a week. Holy shit, totally sounds like my daughter Kinsey and Mommy E, Baby E. Ew. She never felt scared enough to not go to sleep or try to not sleep in her room as long as her brother was in there. We moved after that, and the hand talk was gone. She never went into detail about any of it. I don't really think she knew how to describe what was going on, and I didn't press. Any ideas on this one? Edited to add. I had 2 experiences in this apartment myself. With my bedroom door that was closed with clothes rack hanging on it, violently shaking for 3 seconds one morning. I thought my husband had come home, but no one was there. My kids were in their room sleeping. They had a safety thing on the doorknob, so there's no way it was one of them, and I had no pets. Another incident occurred when my family woke up to our front door being wide open. We never used the front door, and it stayed locked, and we only used our garage. Nothing was stolen or out of place. It was a safe, quiet area in the suburb. Man, E-Talk, I have to check on you because keep saying, oh man, looks like we buffered. Man, I guess we did buffer. But yeah, that thing music, if you guys want to listen to that, yeah, for sure. Check out E-Talk at eTalk/TV or eTalk.tv/radio. Hi, I found the subreddit today. I think I want to share my experience since why not? Alright, here we go. Layout of where I experienced it. Me and some of my family used to live in an attic where there was like 3 rooms. The middle room was his room and the top room was his brother's. I was in the bottom room. The middle one was empty, but the top room was where my sister was. P.S. I'm not the best at explaining my experience itself. During the night, I saw a dark figure with long hair and long fingers. He was walking in circles in a weird way, and later during the night, I saw him peeking in my sister's room. That was the only time I saw the dude. I thought it was fake until I learned a psychic saw the same thing, and my grandma saw the same guy, and it turns out it was a demon. We have a lot of creepy stories, but it's too much to say here. My uncle saw him too, but he was short and had long arms. The creepy stuff has died down a lot, thank goodness. Bum, bum, bum. Super creepy. This one is by you/twitchypaper44. Ring/grudge apparition. As a kid, I had a few paranormal encounters that I thought significant, two of which included a black-eyed child that resembled the ring girl, or the grudge. It has bangs and looked exactly like a friend I had in elementary school, only pale white and black eyes. First time I saw her, maybe 50 yards away in the rear view as my dad drove me away. Second time, she was in my room as I went to get something, on her knees on the opposite side of my bed. Anyway, I never paid much attention to it, and am not saying the next encounter was the same entity or related, but I've started wondering if they are. This one I know for a fact to be real. It was almost 3 years ago at 5 to 6 a.m. I was being nocturnal at the time, and me and my girlfriend were getting ready to go to sleep. But I went to the kitchen to get a snack as she followed. I wasn't clear what I was doing, so she asked me, "What are you doing?" Then she said, "What the fuck?" And I spun around, right as she flicked on the light in the hallway that was right above her. Immediately, she turned it on, just in time for me to see as I turned around. The light bulb exploded, and a skinny figure resembling the ring girl appeared, only very tall, maybe 6 feet something, and her body only being a few inches wide. It disappeared with a flash of light from the exploding light bulb, leaving me and my girlfriend speechless. She said that she exclaimed, "What the F?" because she saw a white mist beside her, which is also why she turned on the light. It's the realest experience I've had yet, and the most chilling. Me and that girlfriend broke up now, but the whole 2 years I was with her, creepy phenomena happened constantly, from the one I just mentioned, to us hearing voices, rhythmic tapping on the windows, apparitions, dogs growling at nothing, and one time I heard stomping running up to me from behind, despite being alone. But nothing like the skinny light bulb figure. The most notable other experiences were when we heard mumbling outside our bedroom door, but we were alone in the house. When I was alone going to sleep, I saw a shadow figure walking parallel to my bed. I was talking about turning the bedroom light on, only for it to turn on by itself. Right as we mentioned it, and items being moved and lost randomly, sometimes randomly appearing in the freezer or other places. My dog at the time was pretty quiet unless he could physically see a person walking outside or something, but my girlfriend said that as I was at work, the dog would often growl at the hallway, her hair standing up as well. I never had him do that the whole 15 years I had him. Almost all experiences were in the same house, and we both experienced them together and apart. But it was worse for her, especially when she was alone at the house and I was at work. There were also times in 2 other houses that she claimed to see someone laying beside her, facing her despite being alone. I will also mention I never experienced things so real even in that house until I got with her, and everything ceased when we broke up. I have not had many things happen since, and it's been a year. Any thoughts? Was my ex haunted? Is the ring girl or figures like that from folklore? Could it be what they call like a totem or something? Where like, people's thoughts and things like that can actually cause something to form? Kind of like Slender Man and other freaky stuff I've seen in the past? I don't know. This one is by you /deafnut _lil dash the Shadow Man. I've seen it, my kids have seen it. He's not a nice guy. This is a story of the Shadow Man that me and my older brother would see when we were younger. We have only seen him a couple times, and he hasn't been spotted in a couple years. The first time, I think, my brother saw the shadow was when he was over at one of our neighbors' houses. Other kids were also over there, all playing hide-and-go-seek. My brother told me he saw a tall, black figure. Not necessarily a shadow, but pure black. You couldn't see through him at all. The only color in him was his gouged-out pure white eyes. My brother turned in fear, and the Shadow Man had disappeared. The next appearance of the Shadow Man was also spotted by my brother when he was riding his bike. The shadow appeared at the very center of the neighborhood. He was freaked out, crashed his bike into our car. The final sighting of the Shadow Man took place when me, 3 at the time, and my brother, 7 at the time, were playing on the playground set up in our backyard. My mother shouted for us to come inside, but before I went through the door, I turned to see the dark figure standing at the fence in the backyard. We asked why she wanted us to come inside, and she said she had saw the same thing. This is a true and terrifying story from my childhood. Bum, bum, bum. This one is by you / it's okay _ it's alright. I've had a lot of paranormal experiences in my life. I'd like to post some as a way to document it and share my personal experiences. Thank you for reading. This happened fairly recently. I had a friend who I called Jack. We met when we were 17. I had a huge crush on him, LOL. We actually dated for 2 weeks before realizing we were better off as friends. We were best friends for years, and I always felt a deep connection to Jack, even after we lost touch. In 2019, another friend of mine, who I'll call Diane, tried to find Jack on Facebook. We couldn't find him, and he messaged the wrong guy accidentally. Then, a couple months later, Jack found me on Facebook and messaged me out of the blue. We talked and texted and got back in touch. Diane and I wanted to meet up with him, but it was the height of COVID, so we didn't. Jack and I kept in touch all of 2020. I remember texting him how thankful I was we all had survived 2020. We made it. In January 2021, the lights in my house started flickering one day. The next day, I saw someone walk into my office, and I assumed it was my daughter. But no one was there. More lights flickered. The TV turned on by itself. Dan gave me the number of a medium. I made an appointment for the coming Saturday. Feeling relieved and hopeful, I took a shower before bed. As I cleared my mind under the hot water, I tried to think who would come through when I saw the medium. In my head, I heard Jack's voice say, "She doesn't know I'm gone." I hadn't talked to Jack out to text him in the morning just to shake this feeling. The next morning, a mutual friend called me to tell me Jack had died. He accidentally overdosed on fentanyl. I was crushed. It still hurts. He was a good friend. I should note that I have SLI, or sliders, street light interference, and tend to affect electronics and such, so I didn't think much of the lights flickering at first. Thanks for reading my experience. This one is by you/the ratty woman, using our voices. Me and my brother got harassed by something. It keeps, hasn't for a while, using our voices to yell our names at us. Random information. It only happens at night and has only happened in one place. When it yells at my brother, I can't hear it, and when it yells at me, he can't hear it. It only acts up when it's behind us, and never says anything other than our names in the other voices. It uses my brother's voice to yell at me, and uses my voice to yell at my brother. We kind of got used to it. Before we absolutely shit ourselves and ran, but now we kind of just go, again, what the fuck, man? And leave the area. What the F is this? So, okay, when I was, I'm gonna say like 15 years old, I used to run. So I'd go to the store and people would say, hey, I'm gonna run to the store. And I actually ran to the store. And I remember, like, in my peripherals or when I look behind me, I'd see shadow people. And then especially on my street, guess what? I grew up as a kid in elementary school and junior high on North Elm Street. Like, you know, that's where Freddy Krueger is. But anyways, I'd be running to the store and running back, and I would hear somebody calling my name. And when I'd look behind me, I'd actually see shadow people like dodging into the bushes and stuff. So freaking weird. But that stuff does happen, and you know, it could be doppelgangers, or a lot of people call them mimics. So they mimic not only your voice, but like she said, her brother's voice. So that's pretty intriguing. This one is by you, /Ford F450XL. I have a story for you fellows. So I moved to my house about 6 to 8 years ago, and this started about 2 or 3 years ago. My house was probably built in the 50s to 70s, and I think after Googling on the internet of my property, someone died while building, but that fellow isn't here. And I didn't get very good vibes in the basement or my room sometimes. I live in a family of 5 currently. So this is near my family member's room stairs, and a tall man about the size of the door frame, 6 foot, but had a top hat and kind of in 1800s, very early 1900s clothing. Kind of sounds like that, man. Then the second time is at the same spot, but he had the same with a child probably 5 to 8 years old, looked like a male, then walked down the hallway. And then the third was without the child and walked down the hallway. I want to get a medium, but my family doesn't believe in that stuff. And a friend of ours said that I can see/feel spirits better and can resume that journey. Definitely the Hat Man, and like somebody said earlier, the main thing is not to fear him, and he was spotted right outside my office door here. My son saw him. And then that very same night, he showed up at my daughter's house, so that's pretty crazy. And he also has things I call minions, so like souls that he has captured that he uses to harass and torment people, even though they don't want to. They still do it because he's captured their soul and he's kind of like in charge of them. pretty creepy. Anyways, let's continue. U/reading OK 4307. I need a spirit medium. My house is haunted and I've been having this issue for a couple years. Recently, something happened and everything changed. It's gotten very real and energy is dark. I'm looking for a medium that can come to my house and really tell me what is happening, what is here, and what I need to do. So, if anybody has experienced something like this or knows anyone that can help, I'm all ears. And the funny thing about going back to the Shadow Man or the Hat Man, he was wearing the trench coat and the hat, and it wasn't okay. So this house they lived in was actually like an old Catholic church, and it wasn't until one night they're all partying, drinking Crown Royal Apple. I don't know if you've had that. It's kind of yummy, but I don't really like sweet liqueurs. But it's not bad for a sweet one. Like I can hang. But they went up into the attic, and when they went up there, they found a ton of cassettes. They found a Bible. They also found a satanic Bible. And they found some rock that kind of looked like lava rocks, but more like bubbly. So I think it's kind of like a lava rock, but kind of like more onyx or something like that. Pretty weird. But yeah, it was crazy. Like the same night my son saw it, he disappeared. I think he was here looking for her, and then he showed up over at their house, and he was fucking chasing her around. And I swear to God, I saw him, and then I saw a little minion dude, and this guy was like a lost soul that he had picked up to like do his bidding. And this guy, you could tell, like he didn't have a lot of hair, and he didn't have any clothes on, and he was just kind of hunched over, and you could tell like he's kind of like a whipped dog, and he wanted to do something different. He didn't want to harass my daughter, but yeah, every time I'd go towards the Hat Man, like he'd either go up into the ceiling or he'd go down into the floor, and the little minion dude would just kind of hide and cower in the corner. But this guy actually does exist. Pretty intense. So on that note, boys and girls, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. It was a pleasure reading to you, and seeing your comments and seeing you guys pop in and out. Hopefully you'll come in later and just actually catch the show, because it's been a pretty good show, I must say. And I got my guy Truzo in here, and he said it all sounds good, so better recognized. And thank you to all of our friends on We Are Paradox Media's Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, KPNL Radio, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and wherever else beyond the Omniverse you've been listening tonight. I had a wonderful time this evening, and I can't wait to do it again. I want to say next weekend, but for the next 2 weekends, I'm going to be on a cruise to Mexico. So I'm going to pick my 4 favorite shows and do those as replays. I hope you guys enjoy them. I'm really going to miss you. But I'll be back, and we'll be back with Vengeance, I believe, the 29th and 30th. So we'll do the Paradox Paranormal Forum, and then we'll do story time once again. So we'll complete this book and begin the new one, which is the world's 100 greatest mysteries. So that's going to be cool. Don't forget, you guys, we're all in this together. Together, we can make the world a little better. And together, my friends, we are Paradox Media, because without you, there is no us. We have to do this for ourselves. Until next time, nighty night, love and light. Take care of my views, take care of each other, and please stay safe this week. And don't work too hard. See you back here, same bad time, same bad advice.